Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel and welcome to another anniversary reviews. This one's going to be about My Bloody Valentine 3D, which came out in 2009. 2009, it honestly doesn't feel anywhere near 10 years ago, never mind 15 years ago. But this is one of the first films that I went to see in 3D at the cinema. It wasn't the very first, I think it was the second. The first one I went to see at the cinema was The Journey to the Centre of the Earth with Josh Hutcherson and Brendan Fraser, way back in 2008, at the tail end of 2008. So this one came around in January 2009, My Bloody Valentine. So this was the very first horror movie that I went to see in 3D. Now, with this format of anniversary reviews, if you haven't already seen an episode before, guys, is I just give you it's not a pure review of the movie. I'm just kind of sitting down, relaxing, telling you my thoughts and memories of certain films on their anniversaries, and maybe doing a little mini review in between. But also, after giving my memories and a bit of a review, I read out some memories, that you give me as well. I always ask before I record the video for you guys on social media, do you remember My Bloody Valentine and what was your memories of seeing it for the first time? And I select a few of the comments and read them at the very end. So that's how we structure this video. So going back to my first time seeing this film, this is one of the first movies on my anniversary list that I purely remember 100%. You know, it gets quite hazy for some of the older films that I first seen for the very first time, but this one was, although it was quite a long time ago, it was still only 15 years ago. I was with my wife at the time, even though we weren't married yet, and we thought, let's go and see a horror movie in 3D because we had a really good time with Journey to the Centre of the Earth. I didn't think 3D movies were going to be as good as they actually were. Now, they're obviously a bit of a gimmick now. Nobody wants to see a 3D film anymore. In fact, yeah, they still do 3D movies at the cinema, but they're very rare and I don't think they get a lot of views, to be honest. So I think they will die out eventually, but they're still out there at the moment. Even if you look at TVs now, they don't sell 3D TVs anymore. There used to be a big thing about 10 years ago. They were expensive, but nobody buys them anymore. So they're kind of obsolete at the moment. So it's a dying trend, but I think they're still hanging on there. It's the same with what they've done in the 50s and 60s, and then they brought 3D back in the 80s as well. They attempted it worked for a bit, and then it disappeared. And it's the same with 3D back in the late noughties, the early 2010s. It was a massive thing back then. Some people didn't like it. Some people thought, nah, I'd seen that in the 80s. I don't want to see it again. But for me, it was a new thing because I was born in the 80s, so I didn't get to experience going to the cinema to see any 3D movie. So the first one, like I said, was Journey to the Centre of the Earth. And it blew me away with the technology that they had because we didn't have the red and blue glasses. We just had black sunglasses that looked like real 3D, and it was great. And unfortunately for me, my eyesight wasn't great. I wear contacts. I wear glasses at the laptop and stuff, but I wear contact lenses. But at the time, I didn't wear contact lenses, but I also didn't wear my glasses full time. So it wasn't too bad to see it. But I can understand that people that don't wear contacts but need glasses, how do you wear glasses and glasses? It just doesn't make sense. So it kind of restricts some people's viewing. Well, that's all I'll say. So I think as the years went by and I started to wear glasses most of the time, I found it hard to wear glasses on top of my glasses until eventually in 2015, I eventually got contact lenses because of my job. But by that point, I didn't go and see 3D movies. 3D movies I only saw maybe once a year at that point. So 3D did die out. But that's the end of 3D, to be honest. However, one thing I did like about My Bloody Valentine was it wasn't shot in 3D, but unlike some other films that came out back then, it was shot for the purpose of 3D. As you can tell throughout the film, you'll see moments that there was 3D implemented perfectly, whereas when you watch a film that's been post-converted into 3D, none of it makes sense. It doesn't need to be in 3D. It was only converted to 3D because it was a gimmick at the time, whereas My Bloody Valentine wasn't a gimmick. It was in a way, but it was shot intentionally for 3D audiences. So you know the films that are shot for 3D audiences, like Friday the 13th part 3D, that was intentional. So it was good when you watched in 3D, and it's the exact same with My Bloody Valentine 3D. I think the issue with this film, going to see it in 3D though, is when it came out of the cinema in 2009, me and my wife came out and we said we enjoyed the movie, but after a couple of days, we didn't really remember the movie. All we remembered was it was great seeing a horror film in 3D, and I think that was what brought My Bloody Valentine down at the time, because I think it's well loved at the moment, but at the time I think people thought, after a few weeks, they're like, do you know what, that wasn't a good movie. The only reason I liked that was because it was in 3D, and now that 3D is not popular anymore, I don't like My Bloody Valentine. But that's not the case. I think if you've seen it once, maybe you start to think that over the years, but if you watch it again at home and after 15 years like I did, it holds up. You see 3D movies that don't hold up, this one does. You see horror remakes that don't hold up, this one does. I know that everybody loves the original from 1981, and it's a great film. I'm not saying the remake's better, but it's different, it's refreshed. And if you're a modern audience like myself at the time, I'm not modern anymore, I'm a dinosaur, but at the time I was part of the modern audience, and I'm like, this is fresh, this is cool, this is hip. And it had actors in it that were popular at the time. You had Jaime King, very popular. You had Jensen Ackles, very popular. Kerr Smith from Final Destination, very popular. Tom Atkins, who's still popular today. So I had a really cool cast that if you look back on it 15 years, you go, oh, Final Destination, oh, Supernatural, oh, Jaime King, Pearl Harbor, or whatever else. Tom Atkins, Halloween, Night of the Creeps. So you look back with on this movie with fondness. It's a shame that I don't have any memorabilia from the first time seeing this film. But one thing I do have is I still have me and my wife's 3D glasses from the first 3D movie we ever seen, which was Journey to the Centre of the Earth. Unfortunately, we didn't keep the My Bloody Valentine ones because we used the Journey to the Centre of the Earth ones. So technically we still have the My Bloody Valentine 3D glasses at home. I've also got randomly Harry Potter 3D glasses. We went to see Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. I don't know if it was part 1 or part 2 or both of them, but they were selling Harry Potter style 3D glasses, and I thought I have to have them, so I bought 4 pairs of them because there was 4 of us that went to see it, and I've still got them as well. But other than that, I don't have any other 3D glasses. If we move on to the movie, like I said, the movie was pretty damn good, and when I watched it yesterday for this review, I'm still thinking, wow, this is a really good film. It's not a masterpiece, it's not amazing, it's still a really good horror film, and it's got a good twist in it. Now, obviously this is going to be a spoiler review because it's 15 years old, but when I watched it again, I'm like, do you know what? This reminds me of High Tension. I won't specifically say why it reminds me of the movie High Tension, directed by Alexander Aja from 2003, which you need to check out. It's got that kind of vibe to it as well. That's all I'll mention, just in case you've not seen High Tension. And when I see people rave about High Tension for some of the things that they do in it, but also, I'm not saying the exact same people, but people from our community on My Bloody Valentine for the same thing, I'm like, oh, why would you do that? It's the same kind of thing that you're talking about. Why would you do that? I always like to look back on acting on films, especially that are 10, 15 years old or so. And I think it came out at a time where I was still loving films anyway, but at the time, I'm watching it going, do you know what? The acting's pretty good in this. When you look at films from 2009, I know it's not that long ago, but there's some films that have got quite dodgy acting in it that don't date very well, but there's nothing about My Bloody Valentine that dates badly. The effects are pretty good in it because it was filmed for 3D. The acting's great, the cinematography's good, the kill scenes are great, the killer is great, Harry Warden, as in Harry Warden throughout the film. I know it's not all Harry Warden, but it's a Harry Warden killer, and I think the look of that killer, the miner that goes into the mines and comes out into the shops, the town, the houses, I think it's great. I think it's got a really good eerie atmosphere to it. Even 15 years later, I'm like, this could have been a franchise. I know it's a remake, but we could have easily had sequels to this movie, especially with the way this film ended. And I like the way the movie ended compared to other ones, because this ending is not ambiguous. If they ended it where Tom was buried in the mine at the end and they get out, and then we've seen maybe firefighters coming out that are limping we're like, oh, could that be Tom? We just wouldn't know. That would be what we would call an ambiguous ending. Whereas in this one, you've got the guy who's been killed, apparently, but then we get not even a post-credit scene. This is during the end of the movie, where there's a firefighter that gets in. Tom's still alive. He kills the firefighter, comes out in a firefighter's uniform, takes off the mask, and it's revealed to be Tom. And then we know there could definitely be a sequel here. There could have been a sequel without him anyway, but it just confirms that he didn't die, and there could very well be a sequel. Now, they did plan a sequel to this that just kept getting delayed and delayed. And I think it was Patrick Lussier who directed this movie. He was set to direct the second one, but he pulled out. I think he had a bit of an issue with the writing and a scheduling conflict with other things, and they decided, you know what, we're just going to scrap this movie. It's sad because all the actors could have came back that survived, obviously, and went on to do a really decent sequel, but it wasn't to be. And still, even though it ended the way it did and left it open, it was still a good ending to a somewhat really good remake. Something that I absolutely loved seeing again was Tom's character. You know, he's going throughout this journey as the killer, but we don't know he's the killer. But what makes this great is Tom himself doesn't even know he's the killer. He doesn't realise it until the end of the film when we realise it as the audience. I think that's really smart because as he's going about, he's shocked to see things one-on-one with the killer. You know, if we see it from his point of view and he doesn't act surprised or he goes about sneakily knowing he's the killer, then us as the audience would also know he's the killer. But him walking about going, oh my God, is that the killer? Then we're with him. We're like, oh yeah, that looks like the killer over there. So it's good and smart writing that he doesn't even know himself that he's a killer because he's been in a mental home for 7 years and he's just starting to realise that, do you know what? I am the killer. I'm this person that's got this double life in my head. I'm the killer and I'm also Tom and I'm fighting with my demons. And only at the end of the movie have I realised, shit, it's me. I'm the killer. So I think that's a great moment because it sometimes would be classed as cheese, but with the way his mental illness and his state was at the time, it's understandable, plausible, and very believable. So to wrap up my story and my memory of My Bloody Valentine is, I remember having a blast with it in 3D because it was one of the first 3D movies I saw at the cinema, the very first horror film I saw in 3D, which was great, and it was still a good film at the time. And then I know that people start crapping on remakes over the years, and when I watched it again in the house, buying it on Blu-ray, I loved it. And with the Blu-ray, I've got it up the stairs. With the Blu-ray, you get 3D glasses with it, and it's the old red and blue 3D glasses. I can't remember what you call that, but you can watch it on a normal TV because of the way it was edited, and you wear those glasses. So you can still enjoy it on 3D, the old classic style 3D without a 3D TV. And then I watched it again for this review yesterday, and I still had a blast with it. Not only did I like it, I actually loved the film. I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying it's a masterpiece, but I still loved it. I still had a great time with it. Loved the characters, loved the killer, loved the character development, loved the twist, loved the story, loved the environment, everything about it. There's not one thing I didn't like about it. The parts that was cheesy, it was intentional cheese. And I know that some films try to do intentional cheese so that if the serious part doesn't work, they can always fall back on, oh, but it was supposed to be like that. That's not like My Bloody Valentine. It was intentionally cheesy. They didn't care if it fell back on that because it was intentional. Everything about this movie was absolutely intentional, and I loved it. So what I'm going to do now, guys, is I've selected a few comments that you guys have left on my phone, and I'm going to read them out, and you can share your memories in the video as well. So first memory is from Callum Brown, my friend Callum. Callum said, how on earth is this 15 years old? I don't know, Callum. Love this film. Really fond memories of going to see it at the cinema in 3D. It came out right at the time I was a huge Supernatural fan, and both Jensen Ackles and Jared were starring in horror movies around the same time, and I was here for it. My Bloody Valentine and Friday the 13th reboot, another film I love. That's Jared Padalecki that was in that in 2009 as well. I'm a huge fan of the original also, My Bloody Valentine. The legend that is Tom Atkins and this movie also. Still waiting on a sequel. And yeah, like I said, Callum, if they made a sequel 15, 20 years later, I don't think I would mind that, to be honest. I know it's been a while. I know sometimes when you bring out a sequel years later for a film, you're like, was there any point in that? Because some films fail if they bring out a sequel too late. But I think with My Bloody Valentine, because it was a one and done, you could easily do a sequel in the future like Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick. I'm not saying it's going to make $1.4 billion at the box office if they do a sequel, but you get the gist. But yeah, thanks for that, Callum. Next up, we've got Movie Fan J. They said, I actually quite like this movie when I watched it. At first, the Bloody Valentine movies never appealed to me, although I am a horror fan. But I am very glad I watched them. Also, love the channel. Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, the My Bloody Valentine original didn't appeal to me either. I think it was a good film. I watched it back in the 90s when I was younger, and I didn't go back to it until I watched the remake. And as you do, when you watch a film that's really old, it was about 20 years old at the time, I watched it and I thought, it's good, but it feels quite dated. And I think a lot of original films feel dated, of course, because naturally they do date over time. Some films are timeless, like Psycho, Halloween. Even though these films are 50, 60 years old, they don't feel 50, 60 years old, and it might be because of repetitive watching. But with My Bloody Valentine, for me, I only watched it once before I watched the remake, and that was over 10 years before I saw the remake. So to me, I feel the same. Next up, we've got Jaime King. They said, has it really been 15-ish years since the start of the most recent push for 3D? Damn, where does the time go? Yeah, and that's like I said, I think it came out in January 2009, so it was still early stages, but the first one I saw was Journey to the Centre of the Earth, which I think was December 2008, possibly January 2009 as well. So it did come out a month or two before My Bloody Valentine, obviously depending on which country you're in, because all films come out in different months. But for me, it was Journey to the Centre of the Earth first, and then My Bloody Valentine 3D second. Next up, we've got a message from Matt Facci, Facci's Cinema. He said, went the next town over to see it with the wife, was so pissed it cost way more than my local theatre, and it was like, what the F, not realising it was a 3D charge. Tainted the movie at first, but now absolutely love it, almost as much as the OG. Yeah, I get what you mean, because we were obviously charged a premium as well for going to see it in 3D. At the time, we had Cineworld cards. Cineworld is a cinema chain in the UK, so it's like your equivalent to Regal Cinema, for example. So we had this Regal Cinema, aka Cineworld card, that you would pay a certain amount a month. It started at £10 a month for me, but by the time I cancelled it, it was up to like £17 a month. But at the time, let's say it was £12 a month, you would get to see films anytime you wanted, as many times as you wanted throughout the month, and it would only cost you the cost of your monthly card. But with 3D movies getting introduced, you get to see the film, but you get charged an extra. So let's say you get charged, I don't know, at the time, let's say you get charged £10 a cinema ticket, but a 3D movie would cost you £14. What I would do is I would go with my card, and they would say, oh yeah, £4. So you would just pay the extra cost of what a ticket would normally cost out with the 3D. So yeah, it stung, because I'm like, why are we paying extra for this when we've got a Cineworld card? But you pay the premium price, and I didn't mind it at the time because I wanted to see a film in 3D. I thought it was cool to go and see a film in 3D, and that coolness wore off after time, not just for myself, but I think for everyone, and that's why 3D movies are dying now. They're still out there, surprisingly, but they're still dying. Next up, we've got Joshua Heath. He said, I got to see this at Monsterfest last Halloween. Now, not only do we hardly ever get these Monsterfests in the UK, which I've mentioned time and time again, but the fact that you got to see a film like My Bloody Valentine last year at the cinema, you know, we do get old films in the cinema like Halloween and Scream, but it's because of big event movies. My Bloody Valentine is not one of those, so the fact that you got to see it again at the cinema last year is absolutely fantastic, because we don't get that opportunity. If My Bloody Valentine 3D surprisingly gets massive, then maybe we'll get it again at the cinema. At best, we'll get it in a drive-in, but we probably wouldn't get it again in the cinema, so you're very lucky. Next up, we've got Cynthia J. Cynthia says, OMG, it's been that long. Time flew by. Time flew by fast. Didn't think I would like this, but the original one, this surprised me. Glad that they didn't push a part 2 on us. Well, I'm not glad, to be honest. I think it's okay that they didn't give us a part 2, Cynthia, but I'm not sad about that. But if they gave us a part 2, I would still go and see it. I would still be intrigued to see what they've done with part 2. You did mention it's been that long, time flies by. You're not the only one that said that, obviously. I'm reading some of the comments. I think that's a surprise for everyone, including yourself, Cynthia, that it's been 15 years already. When I do the schedule for my anniversary reviews, I look at the years that a film comes out, and I say, right, okay, it's been 10 years, 15 years. And when I saw My Bloody Valentine was 15 years old this month, I'm like, whoa, where has time gone? 15 years. I still, like I said, I still remember the night I went to see it with my wife. I still remember what I was wearing. I still remember everything about that night. I remember the car that we drove. I remember the house that we lived at. I don't remember what we had for dinner, but I remember most of the things for that day, because to me, 15 years ago in 2009 doesn't seem that long ago. Okay, I'll read one more out from Rob Sandlin, sorry. Rob said, despite some of the acting and the lighting in some scenes, I love this movie. This was my first R-rated film as an adult, and I will always hold a special place in my heart. Put my phone down. I feel the same, Rob, in terms of it was the first horror movie I saw in 3D at the cinema, so similar to you, I've got similar reasons for loving the film. It was the first horror movie that I saw in 3D at the cinema. So that's, again, it's a really nice sentiment when you think back of that. Not sure what you mean by the lighting though, Rob, because to me, I think the lighting was great, especially in the scenes in the dark when they're in the mine. I think it's great. You see the miner, Harry Warden, coming towards the camera. That kind of lighting was great for me. When they're in the woods, it's great. When they're in the tunnels within the mines, it's great. The supermarket scene was really good. So I think everything about it, to me, the lighting was great. But obviously, it's your opinion. But I'm still glad that after all these years, it still holds a special place in your heart. So that's it for my anniversary review for My Bloody Valentine. I say this in every episode, and I will continue to say it. Thank you so much for leaving your memories to all these movies that I'm talking about. I know that I don't read them all out, but I say it all the time. I read them all in my head. I just don't read them all out. I don't have time to read them all out. But rest assured, I read every single one of them. And for the ones that I do read out, thanks again for taking part so that I can share your memories on this film and obviously the anniversary reviews that I do. So look forward to the next one that I've got coming next month. I will be leaving a little post out to tell you to give your memories before I record it again. I'll do that every time. But anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching this video. If you've got any more memories that you want to share, or if you haven't shared your memory yet, then leave your memory down below and we can all share them together so that we can all look at it and go, oh, I remember that. I remember doing this. I remember doing that. The good thing about these anniversary reviews is there's not really any comments in the comment section that people start arguing about, because most people come to these videos for sharing great memories. And that's all we do here on this segment to the channel. Share great memories. So share your great memory below and we can discuss it. And as always, guys, thanks a lot for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you soon.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played in the cat?
Someone's in the back seat! Tell me where you are, John!
Wolfman's gone.